We're back on 88.7 KWDM, The Point, for the 5th episode of Before the Buzzer on a Wednesday. I'm Ian Nelson alongside Johnny Wren on a Monday. Whoa, it had been, the last 2 weeks had been on a Wednesday, but now we're back and rolling. It's a full week again, so we got Before the Buzzer on a Monday. I'm Ian Nelson alongside Johnny Reynolds and Cole Sunderman. It's going to be a great show. We will be starting with some just preview of Valley playoff basketball, both boys and girls. We'll then get into our Class 4A boys sub-state basketball predictions, going over all the sub-states, all 8 of them, and then we'll end it off with some little college hoops situation. We're getting into the nit and gritty of both of these, headed towards the playoffs, headed towards March Madness, headed towards the center, the KC Center games. We'll get to all of that, but let's start it off. Boys?
Yeah, this is a really exciting time, obviously, for the boys and girls all across the state. This is what we live for, and March Madness is also approaching on the college end of things. But for the boys tonight, they're headed out to Iowa City West. It's time to play your best basketball. It's win or go home, especially for these seniors. Obviously, they haven't had the season that they've wanted at all. But you got to go in with a new mindset tonight. You have a team that you can beat. They lost to Cedar Rapids, Washington. Valley beat this team of Cedar Rapids, Washington by about 18. So it's definitely a winnable game. They got to go in with a good mindset. Seniors Sam Strawn, TJ Williams, they're looking to have a big night that has really came up with this last couple of games, and they want to really show out and move on to the next game.
Yeah, and it does feel like as the season has come to a close, that they've started to find a little bit of a flow in this, just in the togetherness of the team. They've played with a lot more desperation and energy, and that's really fueled them because when they haven't been able to score, they've been able to get stops and then fuel their offense off of that. So if they're going to be able to pull this upset against Iowa City West, they're going to have to continue that intensity and desperation, and with how they've been playing in these last couple weeks, I think they have a chance to keep this one close.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just going to be about finding the right pieces. You got to start off hot right away. You can't, like the Southeast Polk game that we announced on Saturday. It seemed like Southeast Polk kind of gave up too early. You cannot do that in this situation. You got to be with City West all the way through the game and see what you can do towards the late stages of the game. But unfortunately for Valley, they are not comfortable with those late game situations. But I think you have to be happy about playing a 3-seeded City West team. There's definitely some other teams I think they wouldn't have had as good of a shot as, like Kennedy or even Dallas Center Grimes. So I think you got to be glad about that and a chance to move on to the next game. But let's look towards our girls' game. Ian, that one is tomorrow at 7 o'clock. How's that going to look?
It's going to look interesting. I don't know. Both of these teams coming in with some very strong points. I mean, for the Tigers, you got Tylee White, just under 15 points a game. She showed out against Southeast Polk on Saturday night. She just was unstoppable from behind the arc, hit 3 straight threes to start the game for the Tigers, and then was just attacking the ball and hitting crucial shots when the Tigers needed to keep the momentum on their side. And overall, Valley looks super strong. You can say whatever you want about Southeast Polk, how they're not as strong, one of the bottom teams, the bottom team of the CIML, and their wins, 3 wins on the year, came against some smaller opponents. This was a very good game, and I think one that Valley needed before this Iowa City High game, because they had kind of been struggling 2 straight losses to CIML opponents, one to inferior Waukee. And even though you beat Carlisle, it was really close. It was only a 1-point win. You got to get some momentum going into your last home game of the year. This one sends you to the Casey Center, and this big of a win, Southeast Polk now on the side of Iowa City High. They took a huge win and a must-need win against Ames, yes, to stay alive, but even just to keep the momentum. You lose to Cedar Rapids Jefferson by 4, and then you get mauled by Cedar Rapids Washington on the road. Going into this 2 straight losses, it was going to be really tough to beat Ames, who had the home game, and they won. They beat Ames in that one by a 36-point margin. So this is teams really both. Tessa Driscoll, the senior for Iowa City High, leads the team 13 points a game. And as well, you have Caitlin Loria, who is also in double digits per game. For the Valley, you got to stay strong in defense. We mentioned this all year. When it seems like their defense gets pressured, it tends to crumple, and you can't let that happen against this Iowa City High team who likes to shoot the ball and does it at a very well rate. If you can just stay strong in your defense and don't crumble, you have a chance to win this game. And I think it's going to be whoever can just stay strong in the entire game, not get crumpled, and not get too whimsy with the ball.
Yeah, and I do think that these last 2 games for the Tigers have really been very showing of how they can beat teams in many ways. They haven't been able to put it together in some games, but they've shown that, they can win a really tough one against Carlisle, where they really weren't hitting shots, but they were just able to squeak it out against a really good Carlisle team. And then they turn around and just dominate Southeast Polk, who obviously isn't that great, but they're still a capable team. And for the Tigers to not play down to their opponents like they have at times, like with that Waukee game, as you mentioned, that's really been showing to me that they're really starting to piece it together.
Yeah, it's really nice to have that advantage, home court advantage for the Valley Tigers against a solid Iowa City team. We don't really know how good they are against, opponents in the conference. They've played no teams of note other than Dallas Center Grimes, which is in the Little Hawkeye Conference. But other than that, they've been pretty hot. Those 2 losses against the Cedar Rapids team, I don't really know what that was about. I'm not really sure on those games, but other than that, they've really, taken it to business against some of these other teams in their conference. So they're looking, to come out to West Des Moines and shock the Tigers, because we've seen these strange games from Valley, and that's where Valley cannot be discouraged at all. You got to really play strong from the start, and we saw that immediately on Saturday with players like Tylee White and Bailey Utoff really taking it strong to the hoop, as well as Avery Moon. You got to find your key players in this game. You got to go quick and just make Iowa City as uncomfortable as possible, move on, and head to state. This team is a state team, and I can feel it.
I do too. I really think that this Tiger team, it's the best we've seen in years past. Those last couple of years, you have really young teams and only a couple of upperclassmen leading the way. It's been very tough for the Tigers. But one thing you got to watch out for in this game, and I mentioned it earlier, is just you got to stay strong on defense. Iowa City High, and to your mention, why Valley just went out and destroyed the Rams was because they started out so hot. Iowa City High has one of the best defenses in girls basketball to date right now, not letting just under 45 points a game, which is one of the lowest in all of girls basketball, before you get over to teams like Johnston and Northwest and Dowling, who have multiple D1 players. Iowa City High is right in that mix, and I think for Valley, you've seen them struggle against strong defenses. So if you can just kind of put that to the side and just trust your game and not get bet up about missed shots, because we also saw that a lot this year, is when they start missing shots, it just gets in their head, and then they can't shoot at all once they really need to. And in this sort of game, you have to just, if you miss a shot, look past it and hit the next one, because when this team goes cold, they're ice cold, and they can't heat up at all the rest of this game. So you need to start out hot for the Tigers. And if you're Iowa City High, you have to play your defense. You have to play like you've been playing all year, and you just have to smother the Tigers. Because if you can do that, you can walk out of West Des Moines with shock and awe and head towards Casey Centers.
Yeah, and it does feel like this game is potentially going to be a game in the 40s, and that's kind of Iowa City High's game. And, they only give up 44 points a game, and the Tigers, they've been a pretty solid offensive team, but as we've seen, as the year has started to wind down, it's really been very off and on. So they're going to have to bring it, because Iowa City High is definitely a team that they can shut you down and they can win this game.
Yeah, that's something that worries me a lot, just of the margin of score. If Valley is going to be a bit startled on how aggressive City High is going to play defensively, because I believe that the Little Hawkeyes are going to come out aggressive, fighting for every possession. And I feel like that could startle the girls a little bit and possibly lead to, a very close game. And we've seen the game against Waukee. We've seen the game against Centennial. They were just not able to get it done in the late stages, and that cannot happen whatsoever. And you're definitely a better team than these Little Hawkeyes, I believe. So you just got to prove it to them. You got to show your talent. And I think if they play their A game, they play their best, you move on, advance to state.
So, yeah, a bunch of big games for the Valley Tigers tonight. Monday, February 23rd, the boys take on Iowa City West at Iowa City West. That game starts at 7. And then tomorrow, Tuesday, February 24th, the Valley girls, with a chance to head to Casey's Center, will play the Iowa City High Little Hawkeyes at 7 o'clock. We will most likely be on for that game, so stay tuned to our socials, and we will let you know if we will be broadcasting this game. But moving on, we printed out the brackets for Class 4A Substate boys basketball. We filled them out, did a little March Madness before March, but for boys, Iowa High School Class 4A State Basketball Substate, and we're ready to share them. We will start with Substate 1. The games that are tonight is Sioux City East taking on Des Moines North, and Sioux City West taking on Sioux City North. Just, how do we want to do this?
Yeah, let's just go on. I say we get our predictions, a little brief about the team, and keep it moving, because we have a lot to get through.
Yes, we do.
But yeah, it's Sioux City East, Des Moines North. It's going to be at Sioux City East. They're the 4 seed against number 5 Des Moines North. I'm going Sioux City East team. I think they have a little bit more of an edge on their schedule. I think they played some better teams. I don't know much about these two teams, but I'm going with the Raiders.
Yeah, I am too, and I think you did too, Ian, right?
I did also go Sioux City East to take on Dowling, the number 1 seed in Substate 1. And just to get through that, we all have Dowling moving on. Going on to the bottom half, Sioux City West at home against Sioux City North, the Sioux City battle. I have Sioux City West taking on Norwalk in the second round, as does everybody else. And then we have Norwalk defeating Sioux City West, moving on to play Dowling versus Norwalk. And unsurprising to no one, we all have Dowling moving on to Casey Center for state basketball. Moving over to Substate 2, the 4v5 Mason City versus Waterloo West, and the 3-6 is Centennial, Ankeny Centennial versus Fort Dodge. In that 4v5 matchup, I have Mason City.
Yeah, I like Mason City as well. A little bit better team overall. It's going to be a close game, though, for sure.
Yeah, and I do. This was one that I remember when we were looking through it. This was one that kind of hung us up just for a second, because these teams are very evenly matched, and you see that a lot in these 4-5 games. But yeah, I'm going with Mason City as well.
And then Mason City versus Ames at Ames, the Little Cyclones. We all have moving on in that matchup to the Substate 2 final. Moving on to the bottom side, Ankeny Centennial over Fort Dodge. I have the Jaguars going over the Dodgers to move on to play Urbandale, as does everybody else. And then we all have Urbandale defeating Centennial for a third time to move on to play Ames. And this is where we finally get our first little bit of differentiate between all of us. I have Ames defeating Urbandale.
Yeah, I'm going Urbandale comes into Ames and is able to pull one off. It's going to be very close. I like, defensively how Urbandale plays. I think they're a tough unit. And Ames has been great all year, only 2 losses. But I feel like this is a game where one of these 2 seeds is going to win. I think Urbandale can get Ames off their heels. These boys know I'm a big CIML guy. I love the conference, and I think they can go out and dominate the Little Cyclones.
Yeah, and we've talked about, as we were filling these out, like, there's always going to be a couple of those 2 seeds that are able to pick off those 1 seeds, and I'm with you here, Johnny. I think Urbandale just even though it's on the road at Ames, they're going to be able to pull this one out.
So Johnny and Cole have the Jayhawks over the Little Cyclones. I'm sticking with the 1 seed in the Little Cyclones. Moving on to Substate 3. The 4v5 at home is Indianola versus Iowa City Liberty. The 3-6 Iowa City West taking on our very own Valley Tigers. Those games are tonight. That 4v5 matchup, I have Indianola to move on to play Waukee Northwest.
Yeah, this one was a bit interesting as well, this 4-5. I got Indianola, though, in a close one. Liberty, it's going to go down to the wire, but give me the Indians, home court advantage.
Yeah, and I do think that this one I really wasn't sure on. Iowa City Liberty has had an okay year. Both of these teams they're just okay, and that's kind of how all these 4-5 games are. I'm going Indianola as well.
And then in that second round matchup, Waukee Northwest has the home game against the Indians, and it's just a 3-way. We're all in agreement. Waukee Northwest moves on to the Substate final. The bottom half, Iowa City West taking on the Valley Tigers. Me and Johnny got that CIML home team bias. We both went with the Valley Tigers.
Come on. Okay. So I have Iowa City West, and I want Valley to win this game, obviously. They're 1-19. They're 1-19, guys. And I've been thinking, like, when you're filling out a March Madness bracket, like, I'm not the kind of guy that is just going to be picking, all these 16 seeds and 15 seeds to move on to the Sweet 16. And because, like, there's just such a gap between so many of these teams, and in a lot of these, when we were filling out a lot of these brackets, we weren't really even looking at the 3 versus 6 games because they're always such a huge gap. A lot of these 3 seeds are teams that are worthy of being a 2 seed. They just missed out. So I think Iowa City West is going to win this game, and I want Valley to win. I don't think it's going to be a blowout like a lot of these other 3-6 games, but I just don't think Valley has the talent and has the horses to win this game.
I think one of the reasons why we both picked is because we understand this schedule that Valley has as fans, and we understand the CIML bracket. And one thing that Johnny brought up is Valley, they started out with one of the hardest schedules to start out with. Their middle ground, the middle of the year, it was kind of easier, and then you end with some really hard teams. When that happens, when you start with very, very difficult play, and this team was very inexperienced, no varsity starting experience at all except for King Jorgensen, but he had sat out the second half of last season once Zay Robinson came back, and none of the starters or players from the state tournament win were back on this team starting. That's very hard to compete with early, and you start out in the CIML team. There was just no games that were easy to win at the start, and you don't get any confidence. And then in the middle of the year, with that lack of confidence, it was just hard to stay in the close games. And then at the end of the season started picking it back up again. The difficulty did. And then again, you have no confidence. It's hard to win games. Yes, they picked up that one win late into the year, but then we said the next game against Council Bluffs Abe Lincoln, they were winning big all the way until the fourth quarter, and then all of a sudden they just start to fade away, and they end up losing close to 20 points. That is why I think Valley, they understand the stakes of this game, and they have played in tougher competition than a lot of these teams. Even though they're 1-19, I think the Tigers can handle themselves very well, and they understand that this is a game that they have to take the good parts of the entire season and just handle that to Iowa City West. Now moving on, we have we said Waukee Northwest going over Indianola, Ankeny versus Valley or Iowa City West. We all have the Hawks moving over.
It's gonna be a close one.
I think
it'll be close.
A close one no matter what. But Ankeny has been so strong all year. Waukee Northwest over Ankeny, and I believe we're all in agreement. Waukee Northwest handles themselves finally and moves on to Casey Center. In Substate 4, we have Marshalltown over against Iowa City High for the 4v5, and then Davenport North against Dubuque Hempstead. I have Marshalltown.
Yeah, I got Marshalltown. I think they really rose as a group this year. They can shoot the ball well. Give me the Marshalltown Bobcats over the Little Hawkeyes.
Yeah, and I do think Marshalltown is probably one of the better 4 seeds in this whole sub-state, all these brackets. So I think they're really solid, and I think they're also moving on.
And then Davenport North over Dubuque Hempstead. We all have Davenport North to face Lynn Mar. And then we have Cedar Falls against Marshalltown. We all have Cedar Falls going to the sub-state final. And then this, again, we have some controversy between the mix. Lynn Mar over Davenport North. I personally have Davenport North shocking Lynn Mar and going to the sub-state final.
Yeah, I think Linmar. I like that pick, and I think it's a potential upset. I think Linmar. People don't understand that this team was really close away from winning the state championship. They were a Trevin Urak miss from going to play in that state championship game overall. So this Linmar team's good. They return a lot of players. They can shoot well. They're really sound. And I think they'll move on against Davenport North.
Yeah, and Lynn Mar, they're probably one of the more underrated teams in this whole class. So I think they're moving on, and I think they do it pretty comfortably.
And then I have Cedar Falls over Davenport North. I think
we're all Cedar
agree.
Falls.
We all have Cedar Falls. Cedar Falls has looked so strong this year. I think, before we even get into it, I think they are one of the teams that is most likely going to win this one. We'll probably have that 1 seed going into the tournament because they have faced a bunch of CIML teams and they have handled themselves just fine. And I really like the Cedar Falls team. Moving on to Substate 5. The 4v5 at home, Pleasant Valley taking on Cedar Rapids, Washington. 3v6 is Cedar Rapids Kennedy over Cedar Rapids Jefferson. I have Pleasant Valley defeating Cedar Rapids, Washington at home to play Dubuque Senior in the second round.
Yeah, I think Pleasant Valley's got this one. Cedar Rapids, Washington, 5 seed over Valley, obviously with those wins. But yeah, I'm not liking this Washington team. So give me Pleasant Valley Spartans in this one.
Yeah, and for me in this 4-5 game, and even in that 3-6 game with Kennedy and Jefferson, it's more for me about the teams that are losing, in my opinion. Like in this game, I have Pleasant Valley moving on, and in the 3-6 game, I have Kennedy moving on. And it's more for me about the teams that are losing because both of those teams are not good. Cedar Rapids, Washington, and Cedar Rapids, Jefferson. They're really not good teams. I really think Valley could have been even a 5 seed in this group and would have been a better team than Cedar Rapids, Washington. So I have Pleasant Valley moving on.
So yeah, Dubuque Senior versus Pleasant Valley. We all have Senior moving on to the sub-state final. Moving on down, Cedar Rapids Kennedy taking on Cedar Rapids Jefferson. Cole said it, and then we've all mentioned Kennedy moves on easily to play Muscatine. And then again, this 2v3, we seem to always kind of have difference of opinions. I have Muscatine moving on. They have the home game in that second round against Kennedy. I have them moving around, but I know that is different.
Yeah, Muscatine's a really solid team, although I'm not really liking their schedule, and I think strength of schedule is huge in high school basketball, and Kennedy's played a lot of certain different teams. I think they can go into Muscatine. It's going to be a very close game, nail-biter, down to the wire, but I think Kennedy gets it done and is going to go to Dubuque Senior and face that one off.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that point of the schedule, in high school basketball, it does feel like it can be very top-heavy at times. So then when teams are facing tough schedules, they can drop in their record. And you kind of see that with Valley to a more extreme extent. But just because of that, I think they'll also move on.
And so, yeah, I have Muscatine, but both of these guys have Kennedy Senior versus the winner of that second round. We all have Dubuque Senior moving on.
Really good team, yeah.
A really good team. One to watch out for if you're a CIML team or even Cedar Falls. Moving on, Dubuque Senior. Substate 6, Davenport Central versus Clinton in the 4v5. North Scott versus Davenport West. We all, I believe, have Davenport Central moving on to play Perry. Oh, Cole, of course.
Okay, so
Yeah, we got
This-
to remember
well,
this.
this
North
is the
Scott.
one-
This is the one.
This is the one where Cole is kind of indifferent to both of us strongly. We'll
So-
start, Davenport Central, Clinton. Me and Johnny have Central. You have Clinton taking on Prairie.
Okay, so this isn't really this isn't as much of, this is just very much a hunch for me. They're Clinton's leading scorer. His name is Cole. So I think that's what's gonna bring them over the top. It's a very nice name he has. So a little
Really?
bias from me, but yeah, I think they get it done.
Yes, and then in that one, Prairie versus the winner of Central versus Clinton. We all have Prairie moving on to the substate final. Moving down, North Scott versus Davenport West. We all have North Scott taking down Davenport West. And then Bettendorf versus North Scott. I have Bettendorf as well as Johnny. I
Yeah,
believe
Bettendorf. They're a good time.
they're a very good team. And then
Yeah.
I know, Cole, did you have North Scott taking down Bettendorf?
I have Bettendorf in this game.
We all have Bettendorf.
It's
and then
going to be Prairie Bettendorf.
Prairie
That's going to
Bettendorf.
be these two teams right now with the updated rankings. Prairie sitting at 9, Bettendorf at 10, I believe, or I could have flipped that.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, this is going to be probably one of the best sub-state final games we see. It's going to go down to the wire. Two teams that don't like each other, and I'm going to go Prairie with this one.
I also have Prairie.
I'm actually going Bettendorf in this game. I've really liked Bettendorf this season, and I'm gonna keep it riding.
So Substate 7, the final two, Des Moines. We got 4v5, Des Moines East versus Waterloo East, the East battle, and then DCG versus Ottumwa in that 3v6. We all have Des Moines East going to face their crosstown rival Des Moines Roosevelt in that 1v4, and then we all have Des Moines Roosevelt going on to the Substate final in the 3v6, DCG versus Ottumwa. We all have DCG easily moving on to face Johnston, and then again, that CIML just supremacy. We have Johnston to defeat DCG, taking Roosevelt versus Johnston, and this is where it's going to be a very good game where I take my first 2 seed to move on, and I have Johnston defeating Roosevelt on the road to move to Casey Center.
Yeah, this one, I think it's one of the more weaker sub-states. Obviously, Roosevelt was ranked a little bit higher after a couple of great wins against Urbandale and whatnot, but both these teams not in the top 10, and Johnson, they've been shaky at times, but they have really great senior talent. They're a strong side, and I think they're going to be hungry. It's, a close game all the way through. Could be even an overtime game potentially, but give me the Dragons to head to state.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like you said, Johnston is just a team that can really get going, and I think that they're a team that could really get hot and continue into state.
And then in the final sub-state 8, we got number 4, Lewis Central at home against number 5, Des Moines Lincoln, and number 3, Southeast Polk taking on number 6, Council Bluffs Thomas Jefferson. I have Des Moines Lincoln, the 5 seed, over the 4 seed Lewis Central to take on Waukee.
Yeah, I actually changed it to Lincoln, but I decided to change it back to Lewis Central. This one is really flip a coin for me because Lincoln has played a lot of great teams, but hasn't really seen the result. And Lewis Central is a completely different side where they've seen the win columns go down, but they played literally their conference is full of 2A schools. They're playing Red Oak twice a year, which is just weird to think about. But give me Lewis Central. I think they can get it done at home.
Yeah, I agree. Lewis Central, they've looked really good, and obviously they haven't played as solid of competition, but I think they'll just be coming in they'll be very hot, and they'll have a lot of confidence.
Cole and Johnny take Lewis Central. I take Des Moines Lincoln. The winner of that game will face the number 1 seed of this sub-state at Waukee, and then we all have Waukee moving on pretty handily to the sub-state final on March 3rd. Southeast Polk, Council Bluffs Thomas Jefferson. Very easily, we saw the schedule. CB Thomas Jefferson just has not looked good all year. Very similar to a Valley schedule or a Cedar Rapids Jefferson, a Ottumwa type schedule, where they just have not seen the win column at all. Southeast Polk moves on very easily. And then this is going to be a very good second-round game. Number 2 seed Council Bluffs, Abe Lincoln. We saw Valley almost knock them off, and then Abe Lincoln remembered who they were and won that game handily. We got Council Bluffs Save Lincoln taking on Southeast Polk in the second round. I have the Rams. I have Sep moving on to face Waukee in the Substate final.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that. I just have a weird feeling. I've been super biased towards the Des Moines schools, and that's just kind of how the bracket is panned out. But, yeah, give me the Rams. I think Council Bluffs Lincoln feels a little bit of the pressure. The Rams, they're going to come in really fighting for it, and I think they can get it done. And I don't trust enough from this Lincoln team that they could pull it off. But it's going to be really close down to the wire.
Yeah, I have Council Bluffs Lincoln in this one. This one, like you guys have been saying, this one's really a coin flip, but I feel like Southeast Polk's just kind of like a rich man's valley. They aren't super talented, but they play real hard. So I do think they'll keep this one very close, but I do have Council Bluffs, Abraham Lincoln moving on.
And then in that one, the winner will play Waukee, and we all have Waukee. Yeah, we all have Waukee moving on in that one. So just a little recap, all the teams we have moving on out of these sub-states. Dowling wins the Sub-State 1 bracket and moves on to state. I have Ames. Everybody else has Urbandale in that Sub-State 2. And Sub-State 3, we all have Waukee Northwest walking out of there unscathed. Sub-State 4, Cedar Falls moves on for all of us. They're a really good team. Sub-State 5, Dubuque Senior moves on to play another game inside Casey Center. Sub-State 6, me and Johnny have Prairie. Cole has Bettendorf. We'll see that one on March 3rd. Sub-State 7, we all have Johnston moving on. And Sub-State 8, to round off the final 8 of Iowa High School Class 4A basketball, Waukee moves on. We will all see how this turns out. It's going to be a good stretch of basketball games.
Yeah, just quickly, based off kind of what we have some similar picks, but we can definitely agree that it's going to be probably, Cedar Falls, that 1 seed, looking at Northwest, Dowling, 2, 3, and then even Waukee. I'm not sure where all that's going to pan out, but that's probably the 4. Look at Senior 5, potentially.
I agree. I agree Senior 5.
Yeah.
I think it depends if Urbandale and Bettendorf.
Urbandale might be a little towards the back, but it depends.
Yeah,
If Johnson makes it, they'll be the 8 seed for sure.
Yeah, if Johnson makes it, they'll be the 8 seed. And then I think if Ames gets it, they'll easily be the 6 seed. If Urbandale, I think they'll be the 7 seed. And then I think the winner of Prairie Bettendorf automatically gets that 7.
Yes. The
6-7. And then Ames will be that 5-6. So it's just going to be, we really don't know until we get really in, because then for all we know, Johnston could get, not Johnston, but like some of these teams could get bounced.
DCG. Who knows? You could see them make a run.
They could bounce Johnston and just kind of break our brackets early.
That's what makes it fun,
Yeah, it does. But that's all we have for high school basketball. Quickly, there were a lot of good college games. We will get a lot into that on Friday, kind of go over what happened this week. But yeah, it was a big high school basketball show. Any final thoughts?
I think that pretty much covers it. It was good to go through all of these games and just really think it through and look into all these teams.
That it was. Friday will be the second round, so we can kind of recoup everything.
Yeah, I just want to make clear that the big game tonight and tomorrow for Valley. Obviously, the 7 p.m. game at City West. Won't be streaming that one, but we should be on air tomorrow, 7 p.m. for that Valley Substate final game. It's going to be really fun. Might be Ian and I's last game, actually. Well, will be the last game, in Cold Iron Fieldhouse. We could potentially, there's a chance that Valley makes it, and there could be a situation with the Ankeny game. But it'll be a special one, so don't want to miss it.
You don't want to miss that one. That one starts at 7 o'clock tomorrow, Tuesday, February 24th. But thank you all for listening to this 5th episode of Before the Buzzer. I'm Ian Nelson alongside Johnny Reynolds and Cole Sunderman. We thank you all for listening and have a great rest of your Monday afternoon.